This presentation has been prepared for the peace-loving Ukrainian and Russian people. It is with great pleasure that I can present today a draft peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. The founder of euruo has been working on this draft for the past few months. As you can see in this video presentation, which is divided into several sections, all of which are centered on how we can move forward to a just and fundamental peace that you can all live with and stand for. The starting point has been that both Russia and Ukraine have significant security interests that they want to be taken care of in a responsible manner. Ukraine wants security guarantees and help with the reconstruction of the country. Russia has pointed out for several years that a new security policy is needed that addresses the security issues that the country has demonstrated for several years is necessary for peace and stability in the future. This peace initiative will be based to a very large extent on resolving these challenges. In Europe, there must be demilitarized zones at the borders. Weapons inspections must be intensified. A new NATO-EU-Russia Council must be established to work on these issues and improve trade agreements for Russia with the EU. Companies that have left Russia in recent years must once again produce and sell their goods in Russia. Sanctions against the Russian population and companies must end. All Russian assets must be returned to the Russian business community. Energy cooperation must be resumed. And the pipelines that go through Ukraine must also be reopened. And Nord Stream 1 must also be made operational again so that Germany and other countries can once again receive Russian energy. The Russian minorities in Europe must have good opportunities to cultivate their culture and language. On the Crimean Peninsula, there must be an opportunity for coexistence between all population groups. And Russia's proud Black Sea Fleet will remain on the Crimean Peninsula. This peace agreement is also based on the fact that Russian will also be a natural part of Ukraine. In the future, Donbass will be given extended autonomy. And special Russian centers for culture and trade must be established in selected cities. These centers will be in Luhansk, Donetsk, Sevastopol, Mariupol, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. The idea is also that Russia will help rebuild and modernize these cities. In addition, the plan contains proposals for Russia to have special governors in Ukraine who will promote culture and trade in the area. These are Kherson, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, and Donetsk. These governors will be responsible for future cooperation in trade and culture between the countries. This peace plan is also based on the fact that when peace has settled in Ukraine, there will be no foreign troops in the country, but that there will be 50,000 unarmed peace observers from many countries, and under the leadership of the UN. With these initiatives, which largely meet the issues that were put forward on January 1, 2022, we can expect that this proposal will be in everyone's interest. I have proposed that several countries participate in mediation between the countries, and that 16 selected countries be included in the group of countries that will mediate and try to create peace and reconciliation between the countries. In addition to this format 16-2 for peace negotiations, I propose that in Istanbul, for example, the Istanbul Peace Center 25 be established, which aims to gather all good forces for the reconstruction of Ukraine, and where cooperation agreements and future financing are concluded, including agreements on mine clearance, water supply and infrastructure, and trade in energy, agricultural products and food, etc. We also know that the Ukrainian people want peace and self-determination in their own country. The Ukrainian people receive support from about 50 resource-rich countries that want to help give the country strong security guarantees, while they want to help rebuild the country, including infrastructure, bridges, roads, the energy grid, schools, hospitals and housing and other important buildings in the country. We hope that the upcoming presentation of these ideas that have been mentioned here can serve as inspiration in future peace negotiations. It is my hope that this plan will be well received in the parliaments and government offices of Ukraine and Russia. The American president has started mediation and improving diplomatic relations with Russia. And he also has a desire for increased investment and trade with Russia. It is also important that the European heads of government also see an advantage in resuming natural trade and cooperation with both the Russian and Ukrainian people. Those countries that can see an idea in the ideas that have emerged here can join this peace process, with hope for a bright future and a summer when peace and stability reign again in beautiful Europe.
To euruo5mars2025. My name is Matthew and I am the host tonight, and I am the founder's AI assistant. 1000 good reasons to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Today we mark 1000 days since the beginning of the tragic conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Every day that the war continues, it creates deeper divisions, worsening human suffering and global tensions. The war has had devastating consequences for millions of people. The war has cost thousands of lives on both sides. Every day that the war continues, innocent people lose their lives or their loved ones. An end to the conflict could save countless lives and prevent further tragedies. Over 14 million people have been displaced from their homes. Many live as refugees in foreign countries, unsure of when or if they will ever be able to return home. A peace agreement can restore their hope and the possibility of returning to a normal life. The country has been devastated by attacks, where cities such as Mariupol and Bakhmut have been turned into ruins. Peace is a prerequisite for rebuilding the country and rebuilding the infrastructure for millions of Ukrainians. The war has caused energy crises, rising food prices and economic instability worldwide. The end of the conflict can stabilize the markets and reduce the pressure on the world's most vulnerable economies. The children who grow up during this war carry trauma and loss with them throughout their lives. An end to the war offers a chance for peace and normality for future generations in both Ukraine and Russia. This war has created a dangerous geopolitical situation and increased the risk that the conflict could escalate into a global conflict. Diplomacy and peace are needed to avoid a wider crisis. When the war between Russia and Ukraine is over, we must reassess the trade and security policy we are now pursuing. We must pursue a comprehensive policy in all areas, and this means that we clearly signal to the Russian people and the Russian government that we have no plans for them to be isolated. We must pursue a much more inclusive policy, which leads to stability, growth and harmony in Europe. We must stop claiming that Russia will subjugate large parts of the old Soviet Union again. It is only a sensible way to peace and stability, and it is through trade and interaction with people on an equal footing and equally in all areas. We want peace and stability and a brighter future for the Russian and Ukrainian people who have suffered so much in recent years.
Draft for future peace talks in 2025. It is my hope that we can instill in the Ukrainian and Russian people faith in a brighter future and a summer where the fighting has stopped. And a new beginning for Europe. We must strive to help the Ukrainian and Russian people to reach an agreement that ensures that there is harmony in the future, and that new conflicts and fighting do not arise. For this to succeed, both countries must feel that it is a fair and balanced solution that is being negotiated. After the initial peace talks and ceasefire, a strategy for financing and rebuilding Ukraine must be developed, as well as a strategy for future cooperation and trade relations with over 140 million people in Russia. The underlying problems between the EU and NATO on the one hand, and Russia on the other, must also be addressed. We must understand Russia's overall security concerns and geopolitical circumstances. EU-NATO Council Trade and Arms Control and Disarmament. My draft is that Finland is in charge of negotiations with Russia, and that the EU-NATO Council be located in Finland, which works with future trade, minority rights in the EU, and orientation on military matters. Russia must also be given the prospect of favorable trade agreements with the EU, and that sanctions against the country are lifted, frozen assets are returned, and the SWIFT payment platform is reopened for Russian transactions and trade in the energy sector. Russia must know clearly that the EU has no intention of weakening Russia's economy. Demilitarized zones and disarmament. If we are to move forward on the path of peace and disarmament, a weapons-free zone of 100 kilometers must be established at each other's borders, so that where possible, a demilitarized zone of 200 kilometers must be established. Inspection of conventional and nuclear weapons systems must be put into a fixed framework. Europe as an active player. Europe's leaders must, together with the United States, be active players in the mediation process between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine needs strong security guarantees from its allies, who have also promised to help rebuild the country. Both Britain and France are currently working on a draft ceasefire, and the Ukrainian president has also said that he is ready to sign an agreement on cooperation with the United States on critical soils. We cannot freeze the Russian people as in the Cold War. This is not a sustainable path for peace and stability and economic growth in Europe. The American administration is also working to normalize diplomatic relations with Russia. If you are going to bring Russia to the negotiating table, you have to understand their concerns. One of the most important things in relation to Russia is that we scale back military activity on their borders. The United States has also said that they do not envisage NATO forces in Ukraine. Upcoming peace talks as recently as today, on the third anniversary of the invasion. Turkey has again said that they will host and help mediate between Russia and Ukraine. There is a softening of the situation. This week, both the Russian and American presidents have talked about how reducing defense spending would be a good idea. I have proposed establishing a 16-2 format for peace talks. Furthermore, I have proposed establishing the Istanbul Peace Center 2025. We all know that Ukraine has an inalienable right to self-determination, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. We need to focus on resolving the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine. This is what the Ukrainian people need, all the support they can get.
Welcome to euruo. Today, I am proud to announce that the founder of euruo has prepared a large-scale plan for the upcoming peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. He hopes that the Ukrainian and Russian people will meet this spring with optimism and hope for a brighter future. The founder looks forward to a time when the future is based on increased trade and cooperation. Through constructive dialogue across all areas, we can achieve this goal. He envisions an era where borders serve to connect rather than divide us, where every conversation, no matter the challenges, brings us closer to peace and mutual understanding. Mutual respect and common goals must be the foundation of a world where our differences become our strength and the path to a harmonious future.
Peace Draft March 2025. 1A negotiating format is established, in which the United States and selected countries participate. 2. A conciliation institution is established to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. 3. Russia must withdraw from the occupied territories of Ukraine and respect Ukraine's borders. 4. Russia is allowed to keep its base on the Crimean Peninsula and enters into an agreement with Ukraine on this. 5. Russia and Ukraine develop a plan for coexistence on the Crimean Peninsula. 6. Expanded autonomy for Donetsk and Luhansk. 7. Russia establishes 6 centers for trade and cultural exchange in Ukraine. 8. Russia helps rebuild Luhansk, Sevastopol, Mariupol, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. 9. Russia sends special governors for trade and culture to Kherson, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, and Donetsk. 10. Russia and Ukraine begin prisoner exchange. 11. Plan for refugees and repatriation of Ukrainian citizens who have ended up in Russia. 12. Rights of Russian minorities in the EU and Ukraine are formalized. 13. Possible dual citizenship in selected areas of Ukraine. 14. Zaporizhia nuclear power plant becomes demilitarized zone. 15. Ukraine contributes to sufficient water supply to Crimea from Kherson. 16. Russian Roselkazbank gains access to SWIFT. 17. Russian cargo ships gain access to European ports and the international insurance system. 18. Ammonia gas pipeline reopens. 19. Ukraine regains the ability to export grain. 20. US and Ukraine sign an agreement on mining and energy cooperation. 21. US is responsible for the safety of mining. 22. Maritime mine clearance missions. 23. No foreign troops on Ukrainian soil in peacetime. 24. 50,000 unarmed peace observers will be deployed in Ukraine. 25. Discussion on future trade policy and interaction in Europe. Growth and harmony. 26. An EU-NATO-Russia Council will be established. 27. Plan for the reconstruction of Ukraine and financing. 28. New security structure in Europe. 29. Russia will receive security guarantees at all its European borders. 30. New agreement on weapons inspections in Europe. 31. Demilitarized zones at the borders of Europe. 32. No military exercises at each other's borders. 33. Ukraine will receive security guarantees from its allies, which will be internationally ratified. 34. Ukraine is free to conclude trade agreements with countries and organizations. 35. Energy cooperation between Russia, Europe, and Ukraine is restored. 36. Nord Stream 1 is re-established. 37. Germany and other countries commit to buying energy from Russia. 38. All sanctions against Russian companies and individuals are lifted. 39. Frozen Russian assets are released. 40. Companies that have left Russia commit to resume their activities. 41. Compensation for Ukrainian citizens who have lost property in Crimea. 42. Russia is included again in the international banking systems. 43. International support for the reconstruction of Ukraine and financial compensation from Russia. 44. Ensuring access to food and protection of export routes for grain and other food products. 45. Energy security and energy infrastructure must be ensured. 46. 46. Russia and Ukraine sign a trade agreement and gas supplies from Russia. 47. The Kerch Bridge is a natural part of the transport system. 48. Easing visa requirements for Russian and Ukrainian citizens to the EU and the UK. 49. The EU concludes an expanded trade agreement with Russia, Ukraine, the UK, and Belarus. 50. A peace center is being created to coordinate the reconstruction of Ukraine. 50. Thank you for listening and watching. Euro 2025.